Hi Year 6, my name's Miss Green and I'm the attendance officer at Ormiston Horizon Academy. You'll usually find me in student reception, or sometimes I'll be on duty in the restaurant during lunchtime. It'd be lovely if you could give me a little wave as you come past, or just say hello, and it's going to be brilliant getting to know all of you. So I look forward to meeting you all in September. Now, we're reading Stormbreaker, so I'd like you to have the text in front of you so you can read along with me, and I'd also like you to have the workbook so you can complete some tasks afterwards. So I'm sharing my chapter with Mr. Woodcock. So I don't know if you've just finished his or you've had a little break in between, but you'll be picking up with me on page 61, quite near the bottom, and the first line is at 1:30 in the morning. So hopefully you're sitting comfortably and you've got a drink, and we will begin. So at 1:30 in the morning, Alex's eyes blinked open and he was instantly awake. He slipped out of bed and dressed quickly in his darkest clothes, then left the room. He was half surprised that the door was open and that the corridors seemed to be unmonitored. But this was, after all, Sale's private house, and any security would have been designed to stop people coming in, not leaving. Sale had warned him not to leave the house, but the voices behind the metal door had spoken of something arriving at 2 o'clock. Alex had to know what it was. What could be such a big secret that it had to arrive in the middle of the night? He found his way into the kitchen and tiptoed past a stretch of gleaming silver surfaces and an oversized fridge. Let sleeping dogs lie, he thought to himself, remembering the dinner. There was a side door, fortunately with the key still in the lock. Alex turned it and let himself out. As a last-minute precaution, he locked the door and kept the key. Now at least he had a way back in. It was a soft grey night with a half moon forming a perfect D in the sky. D for what? Alex wondered. Danger, discovery or disaster. Only time would tell. He took 2 steps forward and then froze as a searchlight directed from a tower that he hadn't even seen roll past inches away. At the same time, he became aware of voices, and 2 guards walked slowly across the garden, patrolling the back of the house. They were both armed, and Alex remembered what Sale had said. An accidental shooting would save him £4,000, and given the importance of Stormbreakers, would anyone care just how accidental the shooting might have been? He waited until the men had gone, then took the opposite direction, running along the side of the house, crouching low under the windows. He reached the corner and looked around. In the distance, the airstrip was fit up, and there were figures, more guards and technicians everywhere. One man he recognised, walking past the fountain towards a truck parked next to a couple of cars. He was tall and gangly and silhouetted against the light, a black cutout, but Alex would have known Mr. Gwyn anywhere. They come in tonight at 0200, night visitors, and Mr. Gwyn was on his way to meet them. The butler had almost reached the truck, and Alex knew that if he waited any longer he would be too late. Throwing caution to the wind, he left the cover of the house and ran out into the open, trying to stay low and hoping his dark clothes would keep him invisible. He was only 50 yards from the truck when Mr. Gwyn suddenly stopped and turned around, as if he had sensed there was somebody there. There was nowhere for Alex to hide. He did the only thing he could and threw himself flat on the ground, burying his face in the grass. He counted slowly to 5 and then looked up. Mr. Gwyn was turning once again. A second figure had appeared, Nadia Vole. It seemed she would be driving. She muttered something as she climbed into the front. Mr. Gwyn grunted and nodded. By the time Mr. Gwyn had walked around to the passenger door, Alex was once again up and running. He reached the back of the truck just as it began to move. It was similar to the trucks that he had seen on the SAS camp. It could have been army surplus. The back was tall and square, the tarpaulin hanging loose to conceal whatever might be inside. Alex clambered onto the moving tailgate and threw himself in. The truck was empty and he was only just in time. Even as he hit the floor, one of the cars started up behind him, flooding the back of the truck with its headlights. If he had waited even a few seconds more, he would have been seen. In all, a convoy of 5 vehicles left Sale Enterprises. The truck Alex was in was the last but one. In addition to Mr. Gwyn and Nadia Vole, at least a dozen uniformed guards were making the journey, but where to? Alex didn't dare look out the back, not with a car right behind him. He felt the truck slow down as they reached the main gate, and then they were out on the main road, driving rapidly uphill away from the village. Alex felt the journey without seeing it. He was lying on a wooden floor about 10 feet across, with nothing to hold on to as the truck sped around hairpin bends. The walls of the truck were steel and windowless. He only knew they had left the main road when he suddenly found himself being bounced up and down, and he was as grateful that the truck was now moving more slowly. He sensed they were going downhill, following a rough track, and now he could hear something even over the noise of the engine. Waves. They had come down to the sea. The truck stopped. There was the opening and the slamming of car doors and the scrunch of boots on rocks. Low voices talking. Alex crouched down, afraid that one of the guards would throw back the tarpaulin and discover him, but the voices faded and he found himself alone. Cautiously, he slipped out the back. He was right. The convoy had parked on a deserted beach. Looking around, he could see a track leading down from the road that twisted up over the cliffs that surrounded them. Mr. Gwyn and the others had gathered beside an old stone jetty that stretched out into the black water. He was carrying a flashlight. Alex saw him swing it in an arc. Growing even more curious, he crept forward and found a hiding place behind a clump of boulders. It seemed that they were waiting for a boat. He looked at his watch. It was exactly 2 o'clock. He almost wanted to laugh. Give the men flint-lock pistols and horses and they could have been straight out of a children's book, smuggling on the Cornish coast. Could that be what this was all about? Cocaine or marijuana coming in from the continent? Why else come here in the middle of the night? The question was answered a few seconds later. Alex stared, unable to quite believe what he was seeing. A submarine. It had emerged from the sea with the speed and the impossibility of a huge stage illusion. One moment there was nothing, and then it was there, in front of him, ploughing through the sea towards the jetty, its engine making no sound, water streaking off its silver casing and churning white behind it. The submarine had no markings, but Alex knew it wasn't English. The shape of the diving plane slashing horizontally through the coning tower and the shark's tail rudder at the back was like nothing he had ever seen. He wondered if it was nuclear powered. A conventional engine would surely have made more noise. And what was it doing here off the coast of Cornwall? Not for the first time, Alex felt very small and very young. Whatever was going on here, he knew he was way out of his depth. And then the tower opened, and a man climbed out, stretching himself in the cold morning air. Even without the half moon, Alex would have recognised the sleek dancer's body and the close-cropped hair of the man whose photograph he had only seen a few days before. It was Yasen Gregovich. Alex stared at him with growing fear. This was the contract killer, Mrs. Jones. This was the contract killer Mrs. Jones had told him about. The men who had murdered Ian Ryder. He was dressed in grey overalls and sneakers. He was smiling. He was the last person Alex wanted to meet. At the same time, he forced himself to stay where he was. He had to work this out. Yasen Gregovich had supposedly met Sale in Cuba. Now here he was in Cornwall. So the two of them were working together. But why? Why should the Stormbreaker project possibly need a man like him? Nadia Vole walked to the end of the jetty and Yasen climbed down to meet her. They spoke for a few minutes, but even assuming they had chosen the English language, there was no chance of their being overheard. Meanwhile, the guards from Sale Enterprises had formed a line stretching back almost to the point where the vehicles were parked. Yasen gave an order and, as Alex watched from behind the rocks, a metallic silver box with a vacuum seal appeared, held by unseen hands at the top of the submarine's tower. Yasen himself passed it down to the first of the guards, who then passed it back up the line. About 40 more boxes followed, one after the other. It took almost an hour to unload the submarine. The men handled the boxes carefully, and they obviously didn't want to break whatever was inside. By the end of the hour, they were almost finished. The boxes were being repacked now into the back of the truck that Alex had vacated, and that was when it happened. One of the men standing on the jetty dropped one of the boxes. He managed to catch it again at the last minute, but even so it banged down heavily on the stone surface. Everybody stopped instantly. It was as if a switch had been thrown, and Alex could almost feel the raw fear in the air. Yasin was the first to recover. He darted forward along the jetty, moving like his cat, his feet making no sound. He reached the box and he ran his hands over it, checking the seal, then nodded slowly. The metal wasn't even dented. With everybody so still, Alex heard the exchange that followed. "I'm sorry," the guard said. I wouldn't do that. I won't do that again." "No, you won't," Yasin agreed, and shot him. The bullet spat out of his hand, red in the darkness. It hit the man in the chest, propelling him backward in an awkward cartwheel, and the man fell into the sea. For a few seconds he looked up at the moon, as if trying to admire it one last time, and then the black water folded over him. It took them another 20 minutes to finish loading the truck. Yasin got onto the front seat with Nadia Vol, and this time Mr. Grimm went in one of the cars. Alex had to time his return carefully as the truck picked up speed, rumbling back up towards the road. He left the cover of the rocks, ran forward and pulled himself in. There was hardly any room with all the boxes, but he managed to find a hole and squeezed himself into it. He ran a hand over one of the boxes. It was about the size of a toaster oven, unmarked and cold to the touch. Close up, it looked like the sort of thing you might take on a high-tech picnic. He tried to find a way to open it, but it was locked in a way he didn't understand. He looked back out of the truck. The beach and the Yeti were already far below them. The submarine was pulling out to sea. One moment it was there, sleek and silver, gliding through the water, and the next it had sunk below the surface, disappearing as quickly as a bad dream. So that's the end of my chapter. I hope you've enjoyed reading along with me. Mrs. Ackley will pick up now in Death in the Long Grass. So, again, can't wait to meet you in September. Take care. See you soon.